Yeah, my name is Dr. Fred Bell, and I've been a scientist, I guess, since I was a kid. I attended the University of Michigan when I was very young, and then I went from there, and I worked at the University of Michigan on in a physics lab at the Randolph Lab under a guy by the name of Dr. Katz. We did some research with the Philadelphia experiment, which wasn't called that in those days. It was just some area of phenomenal research that was being done. Worked with atomic equipment like the cyclotron, the synchrotron. Left that, I went into the Air Force. I was involved with the Air Force with early warning radar at the 776th Aero Squadron up in Northern California. And the radars I worked on, one of them was real interesting, was called an ANF-PS35. And it was the one that was developed out at Los Alamos and was in use when the Roswell crash took place, because that was the type of microwave radar that brought those ships down, because they had very sensitive plutonium reactors that reacted with the radio frequency emissions from the radar. So then I went from there. I left and went to work for Rockwell for a number of years, and worked with different divisions of Rockwell, from optics stuff, which like the ILAS contracts over at Autonetics, which became the basement of the Star Wars project. Then I went into propulsion systems and worked with Wernher von Braun on the Saturn, which eventually took man to the moon. And I left the aerospace industry and went into electronic instrumentation. I worked for a firm up called EH Research for a long time in Oakland, California, and my job there was to instrumentize over 2,000 projects all over the United States. So I went into about 3,000 different firms, one after the other, and did instrumentation. So at that time, I was pretty much abreast of everything that was scientifically going on in America, almost every project. I had 15 years out of secret clearance. So I left that and started my own electronics manufacturing company, and sold that and retired for a while, and studied with Himalayan masters, became a Pleiadian contactee in 1971, and began to educate people, including myself at the time, into this higher technology of science, which we currently use today. As a result of that, I started a company called Pyradyne, and we developed several hundred products which are used worldwide, not only by our firm, but other firms as well. I do a lot of formulations in nutrition, in minerals, bodybuilding, consciousness changing. I've worked with lasers. We have crystal mines in Arkansas, so we do a lot of crystal mining, which we use in conjunction with our laser work, which changes consciousness. I produce music. I have my own recording studio. I've got currently 4 albums worldwide. One I did with Stephen Halpern, who you might be familiar with, one called Higher Ground. Another one similar to it called Galactic Meditation with Werner Ahrens in Germany. And another album I've just recently have not released yet with George Winston, which is the well-known pianist. He's on it, playing a guitar, believe it or not, a Hawaiian slack key guitar, because music is a universal language. The Pleiadians came in '71, and the first time they spent from '71 to '89 giving us scientific information about the condition of the world and what was going on behind the scenes, a lot of times with our own government that people didn't know about. 1989, it became an Andromedan contactee up until the present, and the Pleiadians have come and gone, primarily to give me support dealing with the Andromedans, because they're a different life form. They're all humanoid in appearance, but when you deal with different life forms, the communication, to telepathic especially, these parameters that you had to use as a self-discipline to maintain clarity change. So I've had a difficulty with the Andromedans because of what they call holographic communications that they use, and it was different for me. It's almost like you're paralyzed when you're communicating with them, because they completely control your central nervous system.
Who are the Pleiadians?
The Pleiadians are from the Pleiades, which is about 500 light years here from here. A lady by the name of Semyasi is the one that I've been in contact with all these years. And they're human-like. They live about 1,000 to 1,500 of our years. So they have a different, system, a little bit higher efficiency system. We have the potential to raise our lifespans to that level once we stop spreading viruses and germs and all the things and get into some serious nutritional habits and these kinds of things. A lot of people were taking pictures of the Pleiadian ships, and a lot of fake pictures came out, some real ones, and so there was so much disinformation from the contactees themselves, the government getting involved, that it became hard to use and substantiate whose photos were real and whose weren't. And some of the behavior of some of these contactees, they went on huge ego trips and all kinds of other things happened, and some of them became very possessive with their contacts, claiming that others couldn't possibly have them. They were the sole perpetuators of different, Pleiadian life forms, and the contact was only between them and it got completely on an ego trip. So Pleiadians told me to start taking pictures, which I hadn't done before. I've taken a few, but I mean, get serious about it. So I started doing that. But the first photo session that I had, I ran out of film, but I did get 2 really good shots, which are here, of an Andromedan ship that came in. I have a drawing of what it looks like, because it came up closer. And each shot, as you see the 2 shots, I had 4 shots. 2 were, the lens I was using didn't show up very good, the first 2 shots. The second 2 shots came up much clearer, and of course then I ran out of film when they were right in my face. But that was just, those shots were only taken 4 months ago, so I'll have more. That's an ongoing thing now. I'm taking my own pictures. Because I have a knowledge, I was well educated. They typically choose people that are well educated on some level with some credibility, and I had a good orthodox science background. Most people don't have that. As a matter of fact, I look around at the generation today out there, the music and all the things they do, I don't see much consciousness at all anymore. It's kind of sad. I'm sure there's some really powerful people out there that are coming through all of this, but the generations definitely change. Well, they're involved in many ways. They're involved in cover-ups, in disinformation, human experimentation, DNA research, scientific exploration, joint alien government technologies, hiding them on Indian reservations, colonization without the authorization of our Constitution. And our government's not the only one. There's several governments that are in collusion: England, Japan, Russia. All of them are in some form of collusion on these things. Yeah. Proof is everywhere. There's everywhere. Anybody with any common sense could just take 5 minutes and get on the internet, do some research there, attend a few meetings, contact a few credible scientists. It's everywhere. It's pretty hard. There's so many photographs worldwide. There's so many sightings. You could just go down and take a trip down to Mexico. There's sightings every day all over the place down there. Mass sightings in Mexico City that last 2 or 3 weeks at a time. There's plenty of proof. Well, the Andromedans are involved with divine intervention. The Pleiadians teach us technologies to help for self-help, and the Andromedans are involved in a way that they go in and actually change the inner mechanics of the way the Earth behaves with the solar system and the lunar system and the stellar system. So they manipulate the planet itself. And of course the life forms are then brought into this influence of manipulation. It's called divine intervention. Well, they communicate with us through our bodies and our consciousness, primarily through the aura fields of the Earth and the aura fields of people. Well, we're in a self-destruct mode. The aura field of the people that control this planet is self-destructive. It's into greed. It's not into healing the planet. Almost every environmental move that has any credence is violently opposed by some industrial faction. So, I mean, if we were allowed to continue, there would be a lot of innocent souls that would be destroyed. So they're constantly monitoring that. Well, this is Pleiadian technology, and I'll demonstrate this in a minute. The Pleiadians teach technology, the human cell structure, from the DNA level and beyond that. They divide the cell structure into 3 basic sections. First, the lowest section is the biochemical section, where we use vitamins, minerals, foods that we put in our body, which could be considered drugs if you take them in the wrong, order. Anything that's metabolic that has anything to do with nutrition or medicine or any kind of substance in the body, that's the first level, that's the base level. Controlling the way cells behave, controlling that level, are the electrical levels, the ionization changes that go on biochemically to produce and to dissolve and to metabolize certain things in the body. Okay, so we have biochemical level, we have an electrical level. Electricity contains an intelligence. Electricity is taught by the Pleiadians as a living entity, just like we would teach as a fish or an animal or a bird as a living entity. So is electricity behaving that way too. And the science that deals with the behavioral, the consciousness, behavioral effects of electricity in the body is called the science of electrical precursation. The series is of parameters that over a period of time the cells sense over a 24-hour period of time to cause changes in the biochemistry, in the cell structures, the autocrine, paracrine, endocrine levels, all hormonal levels of the body. This is their science that they bring us. And devices like this are precursing devices. So they transmit directly into the DNA because all the change starts with the DNA on the physical level. The DNA, it's a long ways from the DNA, which has what's called a nuclear membrane or a brain. And the essence of the activity of the gray matter in the brain would be the same as the essence of the nuclear membrane in a cell. No difference. As a matter of fact, in the body, as your brain changes, there's a pattern recorded in every cell that has a behavioral characteristic is identical to exactly where your brain patterns are. So in every cell in the body of anything with a brain, you're going to find a map that would be genetically exactly identical to what its brain is, what's thought to be its main brain would be like. The idea of this type of science, and of course we can get into the biochemical side of it too, which this is an electrolyte mineral formula. The idea is to not to run away from the environment. In other words, there's not something that you're going to put around your neck that's going to cause you to not be subjected to radioactive fields or electromagnetic fields. There's a lot of fake devices on the market that make these claims, but the fact is the body, when it's subject to stress of the environment, stress of radiation, stress of poisons in the air, stress of poisons in the food, at one level, there's one universal function in the body that takes place before destruction occurs, and that's production of what's called a free radical. A huge dose of radiation creates a free radical, or a huge dose of arsenic creates a free radical, and the result is cell destruction to a point that consciousness cannot coherently inhibit it anymore. So it separates from the cell, and if too much consciousness separates from too many cells, you end up with a disease section in the body, or you end up dead, out of your body. So this is a device that's easy to demonstrate, because what we're going to do is we're going to put a deadly poison into your body, and you're going to get strong. You're going to actually gain energy from it, because the body's going to go through a conversion process. So I will find my glue. What we use is a very powerful glue. It's got a skull and crossbones on it. It contains acetates. It contains acetone. It has about, as a matter of fact, this glue is not even sold without to anybody less than 18 years old, because it's a very good glue, but it's very dangerous, and it was used for a fast bond in the model airplane industry, so it's very poisonous. What we're going to demonstrate is the oral properties of an electrical precursing device called the nuclear receptor. And so what I'm going to have, what's your name?
Giuseppe.
I'm going to have Giuseppe here. He's going to be my, experiment, I guess you might say. So what we're going to do is, first of all, is have him put his arm straight out, put this right arm straight out this way, like that, and make a fist, okay? Now we're going to check the amount of electricity in his body by checking his muscle strength. So resist when I push down. Resist. Don't let me push you down. Okay, resist. Let's feel your strength. Okay, right there, that's it. Okay, now relax for a second.
Okay.
Now, I'm just going to have him breathe some glue. This is don't try this at home unless you want to get on a permanent high. You just open this bag up, put this in your other hand. Now go ahead, this is a toxic glue. Okay, put your arm up. Okay, now resist. Feel the strength level change? Okay, now let it down. A little weaker now, huh?
A lot weaker.
Yeah, now put this on. This is a Pyradyne device. You've never worn one of these before?
No.
Okay, so he doesn't even know what he's wearing. Okay, now put your arm back up again. Same way like it was. Now put the glue back up. Now resist, resist, resist. See the difference?
Awesome.
Yeah, it's much stronger now. So what happens is when he's wearing this thing, the fumes of the glue are still going through the body, but they're not short-circuiting the red blood cells, the hemoglobin in the body, because what happens is when you breathe in a glue like that, if you don't have electrical protection, the electricity structure of the alpha and beta chains of hemoglobin, because it's like a big Alka-Seltzer tablet with pyramids in the middle, collapses. So when you put this device here on and you do the muscle test and he breathes the poison in, this is generating an electrical field within the DNA, and the DNA is able to overcome the effects of the poison. This is a crystal here, like this. We have them in different size. A crystal is a storage place of electromagnetic fields that are produced by human actions. Whenever humans think, and two or more humans think together in unison, it creates what's called the Akashic records. And this is stored in the crystal kingdom, this intelligence. And over a period of time, crystals grow because human actions, there's more and more people incarnating on this planet from the astral plane. You know, if you look, for example, 300 years ago, where was the other 7,500,000,000 people that are here now that we didn't have 300 years ago? Well, they were somewhere. They just weren't created. So all of that creation and all that record and all that energy is stored in the crystal kingdom. So as more people express themselves here, crystals grow at the rate of 0.1% every 10 years, whether in the ground or out of the ground. And so we use that intelligence for a whole variety of human body functions. Samyasi defined she's the one I spoke to from the Pleiades, they defined the crystal as a perfect synthesis of spirit and matter in zero time. That's their definition of it. But actually the way I got into it, I met people in this New Age field that are into crystals, and they gradually began to demonstrate things and show me things, and over a period of 20 years I began to get familiar with what goes on in the mineral kingdom. Before that, when I was at NASA, I wouldn't have known a piece of gravel from a piece of quartz. I didn't know anything about it, but gradually it was exposed, you know. That's how I got into it. It takes a while to really understand, but if you realize the effects of gemstones on our civilization, gemstone is a very high form of mineral. And a mineral, of course, your body's 5% minerals, but that 5% controls 95% of all metabolic functions. So again, when you get into crystals, you're dealing with gemstones and you're dealing with a lot of different things. And it's a very broad field. And on the world market, it has a real prominent place in the dollar, how it's spent. So, well, look at the De Beers family, how much power they've had over controlling diamond prices. Diamonds are just about as common as rocks on the street in Africa. But it's a death sentence to sneak one out of Africa for any African. He can be shot for that, you know, because they have tremendous, you know, monopolies on these different gemstones. Which then it's too bad because people don't get to use and benefit from the different frequencies of diamonds. We work with all different frequencies of diamonds because they come in many colors. Each color responds to something on the body, you know.
Go ahead.
Okay, when I first was working with NASA, when I was working at Rockwell, we were having a lot of problems with quality control. And I could see that somebody was going to be killed at some point. And so in 1967, when we lost three of our astronauts on the Cape with an internal fire which exploded inside the Apollo spacecraft, it was something that I had tried to prevent. And then afterwards, when it happened, I was involved in a period of my life where we were testing to find out why this fire happened. In other words, we had very poor quality control. So we did a lot of what's called explosion testing. We developed a whole new family of wires and insulations, so that in an oxygen environment of a spacecraft, because they're breathing pure oxygen, if we ever had an electrical fire, I wouldn't kill them again. It wouldn't be toxic and create an explosive gas. So some of these pictures are taken from the time that I was working on the tests. Some of these pictures we were simulating lunar gravity. Like this picture here, for example, was a simulation of lunar gravity. It was done in a laboratory because before we landed on the moon, we wanted to understand how certain components in the LEM would behave with lunar gravity, lunar temperatures. So we had an awful lot of environmental testing, and I did a lot of that. So some of these pictures, this picture here, it's kind of an old picture because it was taken many, many years ago. But this is an actual explosion chamber where we were developing, at this time with Westinghouse, a non-toxic wire that would work inside a spacecraft. And here, this flame that's coming off of it was one of the wires we tested that failed. It was an actual failure. This picture right here was where we were testing hydraulic lines with extreme pressures. There's extreme pressures that pump these hydrazine pumps and all these things that perform spacecraft functions. So you're dealing with not extreme cold, extreme heat, extreme pressure, and toxic materials. So that was some of the work that I did when I was there. You know, later on, I ended up, I've got some slides of it, but I ended up doing a lot of work with the Apollo itself and the Saturn rocket. And I've got some in my slides. I've got those if you want to take a picture of them. Okay. Now this picture here, we got into sound technologies, and there's two pictures right here. This picture right here was the Haleakala crater in Hawaii, and this is the equipment. This is me actually using the equipment, and this picture here is a picture of the equipment with nobody using it. And what we're doing here is that Somyasi came with a beam ship, with one of their spacecraft, and flew it in a close, in a hover situation, let the sound out, and we used 16 tape recorders in Switzerland to record the sound. Then the sound was brought over here and broken down in spectrum analyzers. And what we were looking at is the timbre, because the timbre of sound affects consciousness. That's why people listen to music. And for example, the sitar is an instrument of consciousness, and was played by a sitar player that's called a raga. And for thousands of years in Tibet, consciousness has been raised through music using the sitar, because the sitar originally came from the Pleiades. It was brought here by what are called the rishis, and they were from the Pleiades and given to the Brahmins a long time ago. So we began to work with sound. In those pictures I just showed you at Haleakala, what we're doing here is we're sending a special computer-generated sound character that's very similar in its harmonic and timbral patterns of a ship, and we're sending sound down into that crater, and then we're using digital DAT recording, digital audio recording, and we're recording the energy transmission changes in the phase and bringing that back up. In this case, then we would go into a meditation album, and we would mix the music, the energy pattern music 20 decibels down from this, so you couldn't hear it audibly. That creates a change in consciousness when you listen to it. We did this also up in New Mexico, sweeping across sacred Indian burial grounds and that, picking up on those kinds of energy. So it's a process that we develop, from the Pleiades. Then we use it in a lot of our music signatures. Now here is the next step up. In Laguna Beach, we have a house, and every year in this house we have 2 seminars per year which people attend from all over the world. And what happens is, when you're in a room, like in this room here, your body gives off amino acids. When it gives off amino acids, it becomes a substance that when if this room were sanctified with amino acids present in the wall, a spiritual entity can come in and clothe themselves from it, and that's called the ectoplasm. So here we are in a room on top of a mountain, which is on top of a volcano in Laguna Beach, energizing using sound and laser and crystal technology, is what this picture is. And what we're doing is raising the frequency to such a high level that a angel type or deva entity can materialize and be seen by other people. And so in this photograph here, actually this photograph was the first picture should have been this one, where the entity actually appeared, and you can see the wings of the entity, the angel. And in the second photograph, it's flying out. The guy that took these pictures specializes in this type of photography. He's from Germany. And when the entity came out of this grid system that it was in, he did a close-up on it, and you can see the divine essence of it exploding into pure light almost, because we are light. And these entities can come and go and move around on different planes and be photographed. More and more of this is going on as we approach the year 2000, as people get more into this and understanding how it's done, the mechanics of it. So it's basically an understanding of mechanics of how energies behave in rooms and outside of rooms. And so that's a lot of the work that we've been doing. A couple other pictures here. The propulsion system. The Pleiadians gave us ideas about how their propulsion systems. And so in the laboratory we were able to mock up some of the spaceship engines and perform the optics and get some of the results that they get from their ships. That's what this photograph is. And these other two photographs down here are another group, an Andromedan group. I don't know how that, you're going to have to zero that in. There's a ship right here, and then I took 4 shots. The first 2 didn't come out because I ran out of film, and then as it got closer, there's another picture of it right there. So I don't know if you have to zoom that in or anything. So these are some photographs of some ships that I've actually taken myself. We also, because we find that in different fields of life, people's energy levels are very low. People are susceptible to things like the Ebola virus and all the different AIDS, things that are going around. So we find it very important to build the immune system and build the body systems. So we develop products like this colloidal silver, where we use silver, echinacea gustifolia herb, which is a very powerful antifungal herb, and grapeseed extract, OPCs combined. And colloidal silver was patented and accepted by the FDA as a natural fungus, viral, and bacterial fighter of the body. It's a natural antibiotic. It was discovered thousands of years ago when the ancient Chinese used to travel across the oceans, staying out for months at a time, when they would put silver coins in their fresh water supply, because fresh water supply out on the ocean is vital to life. And if you're gone for 2 or 3 months and you don't do something to preserve the quality of the water, you've got all kinds of stuff growing on it, especially in a marine environment. It's just full of microbes everywhere. So that's when it was discovered by the ancients. When we got into the end of World War II, we discovered something, and that was that a lot of Japanese that were around Hiroshima and Nagasaki atomic blasts, the radiation on an atomic blast occurs very close to what's called ground zero, where the explosion, the bomb goes off. And then the radiation then spreads, but it disperses with the square of the distance. So if you're 30 miles away, you get a lot less radiation than you do if you're right where the bomb goes off. It explodes. So what we found in World War II at the end of the war, a lot of Japanese that were very close to where the bomb exploded had no long-term genetic radiation damage, whereas people 30 miles away might have had more damage than people up close. Well, we wondered why. And what happened was we opened up the science of what are called electrolytes. Electrolytes are the electrical potentiators, like a battery in your brain, that allow the hormones to express themselves through the aura field. And this hormonal expression through the aura field is your consciousness. So we found that there were certain herbs that enhance that. Fotai, ginseng, gotu-kola, for example. And the ones that the Japanese that were exposed to huge amounts of radiation with very little damage had large amounts of these herbs in their body. So that opened up a science in this country and others, where we started formulating into, this particular formula is called electrotropin, formulating into the body. The body is 5% mineral, controls 95% of metabolic functions, meaning if your minerals are low, anything could happen. The first way to stop disease is to deal with the minerals. So we began to develop formulas like this that would help the people have a higher energy in a whole host of physical, strenuous areas. Then we got into different herbs, another category of herbs that have to do with hormonal changes in the body, natural hormones, not like going out taking steroids. By getting into natural hormone balancing herbs like Korean ginseng, things like that, we were able to actually change the body mass and get rid of fat and put muscle in its place. So this opened up a whole field of formulas like this one here, which we call a pure stuff, which has only been out for 2 or 3 months. So we got into a whole series of formulations. Now, this originally found its way into the doctor's offices and the naturopaths, and this particular formula found its way into the gyms around the country. But now what's happening is we're trying to make it universal so that everybody, everywhere can start to benefit from this whole new technology. Because unfortunately today, America is way fatter. I mean, America is gaining weight, and the old idea of high carbohydrate to keep your body fat down doesn't work at all because it creates high insulin levels. So we have found that by balancing the carbohydrate at 40% and the protein and the fats at 30% each, and keeping that down to no more than 5 ounces of fat at a time, protein at a time. In other words, something the size, if you're eating a piece of chicken or something about this, or fish about the size of the palm of your hand, as your reference, your energy levels come up much higher. And this has to deal with the whole science of autocrine and paracrine research, of which a Nobel Peace Prize was offered in 1984. So it was given on this. So it's a whole new area of science. The beauty of this type of science is that, you could sit down and you could eat an egg, and you could have a high cholesterol level the next day and eventually die of a heart attack, whereas somebody else could sit down and eat an egg, get energy from it, and get a lower cholesterol. Why? People wonder why. Well, we found out why, and so this type of technology here, which was brought to us in part by the ET and part of it by the School of Hard Knocks, is what we're bringing out in the biochemical to the world. The Pleiadians taught me an awful lot about hormonal changes in the body and about cholesterol, how it's manufactured, things that just was never written. It was all R&D and ideas. So it's a combination of that plus my medical knowledge, combined, and that's kind of what a contactee does. If they're really a contactee, they mix what's known with the unknown, and if you get a result, then that's like stirring the pot for some good results. So that's kind of where we're at right now with all this stuff. I left NASA in '67. That was my last year there. I worked for the government off and on small projects over the years. I'll do something here and something there for them, but no big long-term projects anymore because I've been self-employed now for 20-some years. Well, I felt NASA was a giant WPA program, and that's a Work Projects Administration program. At the end of World War II, we didn't have anything to do because we were in the war economy, so we started building bridges all over the country. NASA, to me, has always been that. We have a much higher technology. The technology was developed at the Lockheed Skunk Works at Rockwell, where I worked. The stuff that NASA ended up with was just a waste of taxpayers' money and time. So I never thought very much of the whole program. And it's a big cover-up today, so I never was a staunch supporter of the NASA tradition. I worked with some brilliant people there, but I never respected it. Because even then I knew something better was going to happen, something better was going on. And rocket systems were totally antiquated in the 60s, and that's when they were in their heyday. We're still using them today, but we're also using other technologies too. I'm trying to get people to take responsibility for their lives. The average person today on the street, they might have a driver's license, but they don't even know how to use the turn signals on their car. That's how bad the consciousness is degrading. Unless you're consciously making an effort to make your life better, it's automatically becoming worse. And unfortunately, more souls are becoming worse than better. So the world is not getting to be a better place. When I grew up as a kid, I could breathe clean air. When I grew up as a kid, the air had 20% more oxygen than it does now. So here I am sitting at sea level, okay? Back when I was a kid, I could go to 2,500 feet and have a better quality of oxygen than I do here at sea level, sitting here by Los Angeles Airport, because we're losing our air supply. It's turning into bad chemicals. There's so many things that make it so unfair. When I was a kid, I could go to Arkansas, Colorado. I could go to Lake Erie and drink the water right out of the lake, Lake Erie. Now, Lake Erie, if you drank that water right there by Buffalo, New York, I used to live there too, it'd kill you. The lake, you can't even see the bottom anymore. It's pure mud. When I first came to California back in the 50s, the ocean out here at Huntington Beach, I used to surf in it, and out here in Redondo Beach was as emerald green as Hawaii is today. Now it's mud. You know, that's what we're trying to change. But until we change the people, there's nothing that's going to happen to the planet. It's just going to get worse and worse and worse because the people are the ones that are causing the problem.